Every single day, people take unwanted or unused items to thrift and antique stores across the country. But as the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and we're here to prove it. Identify valuable things before you throw them away. Join us as we show and tell of treasures found and sold by a full-time reseller with the hopes of helping you find some treasures of your own. Welcome to the What's Sold podcast.
Welcome to the What's Sold podcast. I am Brandon, here with my friend Matt, who is the guru of reselling, the wise master. I imagine people in the reselling business sort of coming to a mountaintop to visit you, to say, oh wise one, how do I sell these brooches?
I'm just wearing a robe, and I'm seated, silent with my eyes shut, long pause before I respond.
Yeah.
It's like in Kill Bill, when she goes up and trains, with the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I'm not that... I wouldn't be that aggressive. But...
You wouldn't kill... You wouldn't expect them to try to kill you. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, that's always important to...
Yeah.
I love that. It's funny you reference Kill Bill. It's probably one of my favorite movies just because it's so, it's just so genius.
It's over the top. Yeah, it's great.
Totally over the top. Brilliant, though. Anyway, so how has your week been, sir?
It's been a good week. I'm trying to get back to normal routine stuff. In fact, I finished a video for the Rusty the Reseller YouTube channel. It came out last night. That was the first video that I've put out in about 2 months. And I'm not kidding you, in the last week, I've had almost 20 different individuals between messages on the chat, on the channel, emails, and reaching out to me through eBay, through one of my eBay stores, saying, hey, I just want to know if you're okay. It's been 2 months since you've done a video. I just want to make sure that everything's all right. I'm not kidding. People genuinely concerned, because I didn't say, signing off for the summer, guys, see you at the end. I just straight up stopped releasing videos, and I was releasing 1 to 2, which is, I'm not trying to cause people mental stress. We're safe and sound. No, life just gets busy, as we talked about in the summers. Having children, transporting every week is a different week because it's a different camp, a different place, different time. This kid's got a cough. He's got to come back early. I got to go meet with this person, or I'm collecting new things, and I'm just sort of, at times just sort of trying to stay afloat. But this week I'm kind of back on schedule. I've got a video. I'll do another video for the What Sold video channel. And as we've discussed recently, I'm gonna start uploading a lot of these videos from this podcast. So it's good. I've done a bunch of fulfillment today. Met with one of my contract workers, delivered new things for them to list for me, retrieved things. It's kind of been one of these, some of the things that she would have listed sell, and by the time I go meet with her to retrieve the things, I come back in and immediately pull a few things out to ship. It's like that fast because it's time to ship them. I had to get them from her, and that's kind of the pattern we've got going right now. But it's good. I'm keeping her busy with work. Things are selling. And so the business is healthy. I mean, it's operating.
Which is what it's supposed to do, correct?
It is. Correct. Yeah, summers, they call it the summer slump. Sometimes things get slow in the summer. August is traditionally a pretty rough month, which is, we're on the heels of that. We're pretty close. It's almost here already, So
yeah, and it's funny, I find... You and I are in similar boats with similar age children. I find summers to be far more challenging than the regular school year. And so this is not in any way a political show or a commentary show, but for those people out there that do not think that schools perform a incredibly important service in terms of daycare. Now, I know that it's about teaching kids to read, write, and do math and all those fun things, but it is a massive on families when schools are not open, so it's something to never be taken lightly. I'm always like, a snow day, they're like, it's no big deal. I'm like, it is when you have to actually babysit your kids all day long and you're also trying to work. So summer can be a challenge simply because in the business that you and I are in, I mean, it's like we work for ourselves. So it's, and I've got flexibility and you've got flexibility, but when my daughter needs Like she's off this week because some things have fallen through in terms of we were going to do a little mini vacation and somebody got sick, and so we couldn't go. And so now we were like, oh, what are we going to do with, our daughter? So anyway, all that to say is
and when that
things
happens,
come up.
it's the business that suffers because
Yes.
it is great to be flexible. And it's nice to say that and to mean it. It's good to be flexible. But then when you actually get called on to change your day, now I'm watching my kid all day instead of working. The thing that suffers is I didn't get to work that day. So I won't feel it tomorrow. It'll be a month from now. I'll be like, man, I haven't nothing sold. Well, there was a couple of days I didn't work a month or two ago. You never know when you're going to feel the effects of it, but they are very real and they're there. So and you have to deal with the frustration of that and move past it and say, this is just a part of the job that I've chosen to do. There are going to be times when my time doesn't feel like my own. There's going to be times when other things in my life, which are higher priorities, take precedence. And then I have to just somehow make this up. So, it's no different than talking about teachers and teaching. Teachers take work home with them and they grade papers and all this stuff. There's lots of work they do outside of the regular parameters of their job on weekends and evenings, and that's time away from family, and it's a bummer, but they have to find ways to make that up, right? Because there's not enough time in the day. They're teaching classes all day. When's the time to, you know that. You were an educator.
Well, I know. You're never.
You're still grading papers. We haven't taught in years, and you're still
I still
backlogged.
have a big round file of kids that I got to get their work back
Shipping
to
it
them.
out to them.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And one of the things, sort of a note, you referenced the people, emailing you on, different channels and texting. That's one of the reasons why we tell people what we're doing. Because we know that we're doing a little show on reselling and we love doing it, but it's not the end of the world. But some people do count on at least the continuity and the structure and they know it's going to be up. Right? They can count on it. And so we try to tell you, hey, if we're going to take time off, my job as the producer of the show is to remind Matt that he has to tell me when he's going to disappear for weeks at a time. And then therefore I can tell everyone else. It is a challenge. It's, you've got a lot of moving parts in this job. Anybody that owns their own business knows that there's a million things that no one ever sees. But I think honestly, your job might even have 1,000,001. There are just so many little things that come up and that you want to do them. But ultimately, anyone that works with you knows that you have to be flexible. That's just the way it is. Even our recording schedule sometimes gets thrown off because, you had to go do something or I had to go do whatever.
Today.
Yeah, exactly. So it is
the
one of those
listeners don't
things.
know that, but I get, and I've got several things. By the way, I didn't plan to not make YouTube videos for 2 months. It just got super, you get out of the routine of it, and then every week it's like things are changing your schedule and you're just trying to keep up. And all of a sudden, here 2 months have gone by, and I have to look at it pragmatically a lot of times and say, okay, there's 20 things that need to be done, should be done today. Which one makes me the most money, like for my job, right? So the buying and selling and fulfilling, listing this thing, getting this thing sold, that's more important than doing this YouTube video because yes, one or two of my channels are monetized, so I can earn from ad revenue and things on those if I'm active with it. But I look at what I earn and the amount of time and I think, well, I need to pay bills. This task or a set of tasks actually earns me more money, and so I'm going to do that now instead of, and I like doing the YouTube stuff, but I wouldn't still be doing it now if I wasn't able to earn. I'm just being perfectly honest. It was the whole purpose of doing it was to try to get some supplemental income to help with the fact that I was already buying and selling, so why not record myself and see if I can, that's another angle to monetize that type of work. And for 2 months, just in case anybody's interested out there, people think, oh, YouTube is just passive income and you just do a thing and you just sit back and it rolls in. Yeah, no, it's not really like that. It really is more like a job because I can tell you if you make videos for years and then one day you stop making videos, 2 months, the revenue that I was earning dropped by about 85%. So in just 2 months, now I'm not really, I have to get back into that again. It's just like if you don't show up for your job, you don't get paid. It's kind of, if I'm not uploading videos, YouTube does not promote anything that I have. They're going to promote the people who are more active on their platform, and that's their prerogative to do so. But I have to the point is I have to do this calculation in my head. What am I spending my time on today and why? And usually it's not what's fun. It's what earns enough to pay, the heating bill or the, whatever's coming up that month.
Do you remember the Stanley Kubrick movie? Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name, but where the guy rides the nuclear bomb down. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can totally visualize it.
Clockwork Orange is the one that that's the one that it's the most famous.
It's great, but anyway, it'll come to me right when the show's over. I'm like,
sure.
Oh, anyway, but I imagine you as like that guy riding the nuclear bomb down, or riding you're riding lightning, or trying to catch a tiger by the tail. It's just hard, and you want to get the good content out, and you want to do it. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we moved to one show a week, because both of us found it's just a challenge to create good content without losing value, we would love to do 5 shows a week, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're putting your resources where you can. That said, anyone that's out there that's made it this far into our rambles, if you get a chance to subscribe to our show, that's super helpful, or any of the Rusty shows. And we do really appreciate the comments. You might not get an answer in 10 seconds, but you will get an answer. If you have questions,
we can start having a mailbag section or something.
Yeah,
where we
that
reach.
Would be great.
Yeah.
Well, and also, if people want to say, hey, where could I go to sell this thing? Like we had I can't remember the name of the listener who basically brought that art piece to you. But if there are other people out there that are like, hey, I do not know where to go with this, reach out to us. That's the whole purpose of the show, is to sort of help people and direct them. We're not going to take a cut from you. At least I don't think Rusty might, but Matt and Brandon are not. Rusty's a little bit scurrilous. That guy,
he is.
Yeah, I mean,
he's all about the dollar.
He's out tending to a still as we speak. So he may not be listening in. But anyway, follow, subscribe. We would love it if people wrote reviews of the show. They're actually super helpful. People read them. There are 7.5 million podcasts in the world. People listening, that's not, bombastic. That's not hyperbole. There are actually 7.5 million that have been created and put up.
Where do we rank?
We're 7,033,000. Okay. No, we're up there, but the irony is
not
that
last.
Yes, we are. So you're saying I got a chance.
Yes, that's exactly right.
The deal with it is that not very many of them, percentage-wise, actually create regular content. So if you find a show like this that you like, tell a friend, because a lot of people, there's so much noise in the podcasting world that just trying to find it is half the battle. So we think we're doing a good job. We think we're trying to put out good content and entertain. But if you could tell a friend, write a comment, that's always super helpful.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's
should I discuss
good stuff,
some
Matt.
things? Yeah, let me discuss a few things that have sold. I'm going to show a few things that have sold and a couple things that I just recently got, and they haven't sold yet. I'm going to listen this week, but the reason I want to bring them up.
My favorite part of the show, by the way, as I always say. I love this part.
Yeah, just the reveal. The reason I wanted to share them is because they were free, and so that just kind of gives an idea. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to hold up is a pocket watch, because I know you love pocket watches so much.
I do love me a pocket watch.
This is around the 1890s. It's a Waltham pocket watch. It's fairly thin, as you can see. Gold color. It is actually 14-karat solid gold case, and it does run. If I wind it up, it will start working and ticking. This sold today, about an hour ago, and this happens to be the first of the pocket watches to sell from the large collection, somewhere around 120 some pocket watches I purchased about 3 weeks ago, and I had a lot of them priced high. I had several of them priced in a large lot, hoping that would just save me a lot of work. Like if one person buys a bunch of them, then that's less work for me to have to list a bunch of them, but they didn't, so I'm this week going through and reducing them to smaller lots. But this sold for $685.
Wow.
This little pocket watch. And again, I have 120. They're not all solid gold. That's a big reason why this sold for the price, is because it's cased in gold. But it is a nice, very functional, and very clean pocket watch. It has very little, it doesn't really have any damage and not a whole lot of wear. So that was a really good sale. That's good to start paying me back for the investment on that large lot. The next two things I'm going to show things that I bought in one lot. So at a thrift store about a couple of months ago, and this didn't take 2 months to sell. I just listed it last week. It sold very quickly. It just took me a while to get to listing them. But I bought it was a Panasonic. It's from like maybe the late 90s. It's a Panasonic video camera, like a handheld video camera. And it was the kind that takes those little tapes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Remember those?
Yeah.
You would stick them in and they would record on that. So it was a case with the camera, a battery, a spare battery, the charger. Okay, so everything that you need to utilize the camera in the case. But also in the case were 15 different of these little sealed cassette tapes that you use to put in there. So 15 of them. That's a lot. And they're all sealed. They've never been opened. So there was those, and not surprising, the VHS, basically the adapter holder that you put those little tapes into and then put them in a VCR so that you can view what you recorded. So now I could have just taken, by the way, I paid $20 for all of that. It was, like I said, a couple of batteries, the charger, the camera, the case, and all of these accessories. I could have just listed it in one lot and waited a while at a higher price and hoped to sell it all to one person. But instead what I did was I pulled out the spare battery, listed it separately. I pulled out these 15 JVC compact VHS tapes. I listed those by themselves.
Are you doing that because you're assuming people that are out there are like looking for those specific components, like
Correct.
a parted out vehicle? So I don't need the whole truck. I just need a starter. Is that what the deal is?
That's exactly right. Yeah, because somebody out there, not everybody out there searching for this is needing all of those things. I mean, maybe somebody wants it and they're like, okay, good, everything's together. And then there's probably a buyer for that. But I knew I could probably maximize my expense if I parted these out, because there are probably more buyers looking for the adapter tape so that they can use their existing compact VHSs. There are probably multiple people with video cameras that have just run out of their little tapes and they need more of those. So I paid $20 for all of that. In a week's time, the 15 JVC compact VHS is sold for $60, and the VHS, the adapter tape sold for $25. So paid $20. I've already got $85 back. I'm already $40 to $50 into profit, and I still have the video camera with the case as its own lot and the spare battery. So those are going to sell. I'll probably make another $60 to $70 off of those. So with a $20 investment, I'm going to net $100 profit. So not a super sexy, set of sales, but it's something that I found at a thrift store. It's the type of thing you could find in your community, I'm sure. And just know that sometimes being creative about the way that you list things can make things sell. It can ensure things sell quicker than they normally would, and also you might actually make more money by doing that. I do that all the time. In fact, another thing I'm doing, and this is not the same type, but just as an example, I'm selling for a person locally this large, it's called the USS Flag, and it is maybe the largest, if not one of the largest vehicular component things that came with G.I. Joes from the 1980s. It's an aircraft carrier setup, and it's very large. It would fill up an entire table. I mean, it's gigantic. In the box, if you still have a complete one with the original box, you can sell that for $2,500. They've sold for $2,500 in the last 90 days on eBay. This particular one was inherited by this woman I'm working with, and it was only about 80% complete. That's a hard sell because people don't want to buy a thing that's not functional. So instead of selling the whole thing, I'm actually parting the entire thing out, every single piece. And this was very smart of them. The G.I. Joe stuff, they have a little code, a little serial number on every single part, so that there's an inventory of every part. So I can just make one listing, 1987 or whatever the date is, U.S. Flag, G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, part number, like replacement part number, and then I give the code. And then I have, let's say, 70 parts. I've only had to make one listing. I can just copy that listing, and the only thing I do is change the picture and change the serial number for that part. And I can just rinse and repeat and do that till I've listed every single one. By the way, one piece of the top of that aircraft carrier can sell for $150 to $250, just one part. So,
Wow.
so people who have one and want to make it complete are going to buy these parts where it broke. Those things are notoriously fragile and can crumble or can break because they're, 30, 40 years old at this point, and they've probably been played with or been out in the sun. Who knows? They degrade over time.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember one time I had this wine fridge that I loved, and they have these little fans in them. They're almost like computer fans, small little fans. They are this is a Haier fan, which is a German manufacturer. I could not, for the life of me, find this replacement now. So this fan this was probably a 2-year-old wine fridge, pretty big, and I could not find this part. Guess where I found the random fan? eBay. So people are looking for things that will fulfill. I think those parts probably you may be underselling a little bit. I think people tend to look for parts more than they do look for the whole, especially when old items, because typically someone will have them in a box, right? And it's like, this one piece just doesn't work, man. I wish I could find it. Like, think about a battery opener on some old toy, and it's gone. It's missing. And so the batteries won't stay in there. You have to put a piece of tape over it. If you could find just that part, you'd probably spend $10 on it because you really wanted this thing to work.
That's true. And, we talk about vintage and antique items because those are the categories I've chosen to sell, more because I'm interested in it, and I tend to learn more things when I'm operating with older stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's what's interesting to me, is to learn. But there are entire eBay stores and even entire companies and websites that their entire business model is exactly that, replacement items. And if you can get into the niche of replacement perishable items, like let's say people use electronic toothbrushes a lot. Well, the little brush portion at the top, you use that for a few months and then it's time to get another one. And so it's things that everyone brushes. I mean, most people brush their teeth. These are disposable, perishable items, and they're going to need to buy. They're going to buy more when they run out. So if you can get into a market where you're just fulfilling a constant demand, there isn't a constant demand for antiques and collectibles. There are collectors and people interested, but there isn't an ongoing demand. That the market, for depending on the category, it ebbs and flows and fluctuates. But if you can get into something where there's a constant demand, that you could do really well. But there are people who entirely focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you sold a pocket watch. What else do you have for us?
So I sold these other two things, the video camera components that I mentioned.
Oh, right.
But so the next thing I'm going to show is just to say we went on a vacation. We go to Wilmington to visit some friends every year for about a week. And
beautiful Wilmington.
Yeah, and this what I'm about to say is probably a holdover from my childhood. I grew up in Southwest Missouri, and most of my childhood, I lived about 30 miles or less than that, actually, from both grandparents, because my parents met in high school. And they both grandparents had large, like hundreds of acres of land, farmland. And I would just spend my days, like we'd get in there and I'd be gone all day long. I'd come back if I needed food or liquid, but otherwise I was out. I'm looking for animals, or I'm searching, I'm just exploring. And both families lived on land that Native Americans lived on, and there were natural springs on both properties. And so I would just spend my days walking along cow trails and in creek beds looking for fossils and looking for arrowheads. I loved that. I grew up doing that. And so now, as an adult, as a 42-year-old man, when I have opportunities to just look around on the ground for interesting things, I still love to do that. We go to the beach. My kids want to play, and I'm like, hey, can I take a walk? And I'm just walking along the beach, looking for interesting shells or rocks or things. I find it interesting. So a couple of the things I'm going to show here are a few things that I found this summer, and these are 2 or 3 just small specimens of coral. They're petrified corals, so these are quite old. They died at one point. They broke off. They tumbled around, and they ended up. They're all different looking, different size, different shapes. But these people who collect rock and mineral specimens also will collect things like this. And you can sell these not for a lot of money. We're talking $4 or $5 maybe a piece, maybe $10, $12 for this lot. But the point is, I was having fun on vacation and I found these, and I can sell them now. It was free. The other 2 things that I'm going to hold up, this will be fun. I'm going to give you 3 guesses. Okay, you get 3 guesses as to what these are. I'm going to hold them up pretty close. Just so you know, folks, For those who are just listening, they fit in the palm of my hand. They're irregularly shaped. One is black and one is a beige, and they're clearly have holes, a lot of holes around in them, and they're porous. Now, they look like rock, just like rocks, but they aren't. So I want you to guess what you think these are, Brandon.
Scales from a dragon.
Oh, man, I wish.
My daughter and I are
Right?
obsessed with Zelda Breath of the Wild, so
There you go.
It's Dinrael's shard or scale. Gosh, I can't really tell by looking at it. I'm assuming it's something organic, or you wouldn't have said they're not rocks. So it's probably some sort of animal.
Not an animal. Well, what you're looking at is petrified peat. So peat, for those who are not aware, is the name given to organic matter like leaves and plant life and stuff that has died and then is just laying, and then another year it grows and dies, and then it just gets compressed. And over time, there are these peat bogs all over the world, but in the UK and places where they have several feet of layers of what just looks like dirt, but it's actually degraded plant life and organic matter. And they're really important, actually, environmentally, because they trap nitrogen out of the atmosphere, and it's a good thing. And they've actually recently outlawed the use of peat in the UK for gardening because they were starting to, get rid of they were harvesting so much that they were losing these peat bogs, and they're important to the environment. But these are it's peat that was in an area where now the ocean is. It was compressed. The holes are from where there was plant life growing out of them at one time and then died. So this is just became petrified, not unlike petrified wood. It was once wood. It fell, it died, and then because of whatever the environmental conditions were, it solidified. And that's what these are. But they're two different colors, and it's I was turned on to this by one of our friends that we were out there who was telling me about that. Someone had told him about it. But it's cool. I found this just washed up on the shore, and now I'm going to sell this as a specimen. Not unlike if I were in California and I found some petrified wood walking around on a hike, and I tried to sell that. You can sell it because it's not it's not a living thing. It's kind of like a rock, and maybe it is more like a rock now, but it had organic origins. You ever seen anything like that?
Yeah, well, petrified wood is where the minerals have actually taken the place of the wood, but perfectly copied it. Peat is fascinating because peat's been used for a lot of things. Traditionally, it was used for two things in the UK, and that was for the actual building of homes. So by the way, in the Midwest of the United States, they built peat homes where they would build almost like bricks. They cut them out as bricks, and they also could burn peat. So those of you Scotch lovers that are out there, you'll often go, very peaty. Well, that's because what they would do was they would fire their stills with peat moss. So peat was they could actually burn it. So anyway, when it dries out and the water's out of it, it actually is like coal. So fascinating product you've got there, man. I should have got it. I
don't know what it'll sell for, but I will list it this weekend. Then I will, if it does sell, I'll give you an update and everyone when we get to that. So that's all I had to show today, but I know you were kind of keen on maybe me discussing a particular topic when it comes to eBay today. So
we're going to talk today about reviews. Now, I will tell you that my wife used to work for Yelp. And so I've had a lot of ancillary experience with reviews. It is a whole subset of itself. A lot of people think, they write these reviews. A lot of businesses, what they do is they'll write their own reviews. No. Bad. Don't write your own reviews, because the algorithms they use for these different companies, they can tell that you've written your own thing or you've had somebody write it. I don't know how they do it, but they do. But we're going to talk about how we maybe, like we just asked on this show, hey, write a review. It would be great if you said what you thought about it. And also how to deal with maybe negative or positive reviews. So let's just start.
I think that if you are just starting out with an eBay shop or just a personal account where you sell things, and you don't have an established track record or history of transactions, I would say that in the beginning, reviews that you're being given by customers or other people are way more important to your success in the beginning than later on. That's because, like, your seller rating is tied to, in part, it's tied to multiple things, but one of the things is reviews and whether or not you have 100% rating of reviews, meaning you've had all positive reviews. So if you have only 10 items you've sold and you have 9 positive reviews and 1 negative review, that impacts your store quite heavily on your percentage, right? Because that's 10% of your reviews are negative. You can, by the way, give a positive, neutral, or negative review. So you don't have to give just a positive or negative. You can actually give a neutral one, which I don't necessarily know what purpose that serves, but you can do that. So for someone like myself...
Well, wait, it might be a situation where you say, I'm thinking about, like, I bought this on them, I bought this at the store, they shipped it to me, it was fine. That's not necessarily a positive review. It's also not a negative review. It's just sort of reporting, hey, you can count on this person. They're going to ship you the product or whatever. So I can see where a neutral review, as opposed to gushing about someone or ripping on them, it's more of like, this is what they said they were going to do and they did it. It's neutral.
But I hear that. I still don't understand necessarily why people take the time to do it, because it does not help nor hurt that person's account, and also there's nothing that you're gaining by leaving the review.
Because people are weird, Matt.
Okay,
that's why they do it.
And what you're hearing a little bit is like my rationale for what I do and don't do now, which I'll get to in a moment. I don't particularly see the benefits of spending time leaving reviews currently anymore, but for me, but early on, you're going to want to do your part to try to get positive reviews, as you would anyways. If you want to run a good business and have repeat buyers and have a clean, honest looking store, storefront, then you want to try to have good transactions with people, which means you want to do your best to make the listing be as accurate as possible. You want to give the best possible photographs. You want to answer people's questions, communicate with them when they reach out to you, and then whenever something sells, you want to fulfill that within your time frame and get it to them. You want to fulfill all of your obligations as a seller and a buyer. But I'm just talking from the seller perspective. If you do that, you're likely going to get positive reviews. However, there are times when you'll get a negative review and maybe you made a mistake and so it's a valid concern, or maybe a person's just really nitpicky. The thing that annoys me the most is when a person gives a negative review when they have an issue, but they don't contact me first. They just simply leave me a negative review, because that negative review can be seen and read by anybody who wishes to do so. Oftentimes, it's a situation that I could have handled pretty easily had they just contacted me. Now, on the one hand, there's nothing to stop a person from leaving a negative review. They don't have to contact you first. However, you have much more of a potential to get that comment removed if they do that. Because if you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm happy to do this, this, and this, and I would have done that for you had you reached out to me. If they are willing to do that, then maybe you can do that for them and they'll change their review. Or what often happens is they don't respond to you at all, which is fine, because if I say, look, if I call eBay and say, look, they didn't contact me, they just left me a negative review. I did my best to communicate with them once I knew there was an issue. They weren't communicating with me. Almost always eBay will remove that comment or that review for you if that circumstance happens. So they'll side with you usually in that case, because that it's not really an equitable situation where a person could say you've done something wrong, but not really give you the opportunity to make that right, to fix that issue.
Can you answer reviews in the review itself?
You can.
So they write the review. I know a lot of businesses do that, where someone will say, oh, I had a terrible experience at blah, blah, blah. The waiter was terrible. I think of restaurant, a lot of restaurant reviews. And then the owner will write back, hey, we're terribly sorry you had this experience. Please come back. We'll compliment whatever it is. I mean, how they want to do it. Do you ever answer that kind of stuff on eBay?
When I get a negative review, I do two things to start. The first thing is there's a button that says request a revision. So I can click a button and in just a sentence or two, ask the person if they will change their review and why. This is what I'm going to do for you, or give me a chance to work with you, or to me this doesn't really seem like a fair review and here's why. Would you consider changing it? I do that first because if you later want to contact eBay, they're not going to make any sort of decision on it unless you've attempted to contact them in that way. So I do that first because I know that they expect me to do so. Then I will leave a response comment under that comment. Oh, I'm very sorry you're not happy with this transaction. This is the first I'm hearing of it. I'm happy to give you a full refund if you wish to return the item or whatever else that I'm willing to do depending on what the circumstances are. And sometimes they will contact me and say, hey, you know what? I do want to return it. And you can't force them, to change their review, but you'll just say, hey, like, I'm going to do this. And I hope that you would honor this and change that review, that they don't have to. I usually do that because other potential buyers can read the negative review. I want them to see my response. I don't want them to think I'm not a responsive seller. I want them to know that I am going to communicate and make the best effort to fix whatever conflict might be there. If they don't respond to me, if they say I'm not going to change my revision, but they also are not willing to work within the acceptable policies of handling these conflicts, then I will reach out to eBay and ask them to remove it. And more often than not, they will remove a comment. If the comment also, or if the review has to do with something that's outside of your control, like something that happened with shipping, it took too long to get here, I can say, well, I am sorry that the carrier, took longer than you wanted, but you can see that I shipped and the label was scanned and stuff within my 3-day window. So I handled my responsibilities correctly. That's another one where eBay will say, yeah, that wasn't you. You did what you were supposed to do as a seller, and UPS or whoever it was just didn't get it there quickly. So if it's something that's on you, now I have a negative review recently that was left, and it was something that I made a mistake. Like, I straight up made a mistake. And so my response was essentially, hey, I'm a human being. I do my best to try to not make mistakes, but sometimes I do. This was one. We communicated about it. I'm sorry that things were left without you being satisfied. I didn't even ask them to, revise it because this is just one I have to accept. So sometimes that's just a part of it. This is a natural consequence of either me rushing or just making an error, and sometimes you can't correct those things. That's just something you got to move on. Every so often, every 2 or 3 months or so, it updates. It gives you every month, like the number of reviews you had, good or bad, and it shows you maybe 2 or 3 months. It's like a month, 6 months, 12 months, I think is what it shows you. So the number total of reviews you have in those periods, and it will show. But so for someone like me, the reviews aren't as important anymore because I sell thousands of things a year. And so even if I have 8 or 10 negative reviews, that's still like less than 1%. That's like, those are going to happen. There are some things you just can't control other people, obviously. So it's just something that you have to deal with it. I check it from time to time. If I see, I've got a negative review, I wonder what this is about. I'll get on and I may respond. But as a buyer and even as a seller, I don't, unless there's such a horrible negative situation that I feel like I need to spend the time because it's just the principle of the matter, or I want some sort of action to happen, I don't spend time leaving reviews because there's nothing I'm gaining financially. It's time. You know what I mean? If it's just a positive thing, that's great. I guess it helps them. I just don't spend. You can automate that too, by the way. Like, you can get in and say, like, for every transaction, it can automatically send like a positive review unless you get on to change it. So that's an easy thing to do, so I don't have to go in personally and do it every time.
Yeah, one of the things that's really important to note too, they've done a lot of research on reviews and how they work, and a lot of people are like, oh, I got a negative review. Actually, negative reviews can be very beneficial for your site or for your business because people don't trust when it's 100% positive, because no one ever gets 100% positive. Mm-hmm. What they look for, and they've done tons of this, is what you've been talking about, is how did the business respond to the negative review? So it is incredibly powerful, especially when people are starting out, to respond to the negative reviews in a positive way, to say, hey, listen, I'm sorry that happened. Let me try to make that right, because people read through that. You could have, you're at the point where you have thousands of reviews, but people look at percentages, like they say, oh, well, they're at 85% positive. That's a really good number, because everybody knows that there are people out there that just are mean and they just are, they're mad. Who knows what happened to them? So don't look at a negative review as like this most horrible. I think a lot of people get it and they're like, oh no, I got a negative review. It's the worst thing that ever happened in my business. Absolutely not.
People who
it could
have
be the best thing.
100% positive reviews usually fall into one of two camps. Either they're really new and they have like less than 100 transactions, right, slowly over time, or they may have a lot more, but 100%, what it basically means is anybody who came to try to give them a negative review, they bent over backwards for that person. They may have lost money on a transaction. They did everything they possibly could because to them, having that 100% is the most important thing. And they're even willing to be taken advantage of a little bit sometimes by people. But you're right. There's nobody who's got 5,000 transactions that has 100%. It's just because, like you said, you can't control people. And it is a numbers game. It's kind of like scams. Every year, someone's going to attempt to scam me multiple times. And it's just because of the volume of work that I'm doing. And if you're doing lots of sales, you're going to come across just kind of a persnickety, entitled person or something, and they're gonna leave you something negative, maybe out of the blue, or maybe, they'll. Oh, the other thing that this is the thing, and we're nearly out of time here, but if a person tries to in a communication, sometimes they'll get something and they're not happy, and they'll basically say, well, I want you to do this, or else I'm going to leave you a negative review. And they kind of try to manipulate you in that way. Oh boy, I see that. I do not mess with that at all. And I'll say something to the effect that, like, you're going to do what you think is best. However, I'm not going to allow you to manipulate me in this. I call it out. I'm like, you're attempting to manipulate me, and that's actually against eBay policies. If they end up leaving me a review, I'm immediately on with eBay saying, this is not okay. I'm being essentially harassed, or this person is trying to pressure me into doing something that I shouldn't have to do because they're trying to leverage this potential negative review. And they will remove those because they don't want that to be the climate either. They don't want people doing that. So if you ever face that, don't give in. Don't be like, oh, well, I got to do this. No, forget that. That's a manipulation tactic, and that has no place. Should have no place on eBay's platform.
Yeah, and I think the final thing to say is, and you've said this probably every show we've done, which is if you treat your customers with kindness, consideration, and try to be as fair as possible. There are some times that people are still going to be unhappy. That's just the way it is. But in the long run, it will pay for itself in terms of your reputation, repeat buyers, all those things. And like I said, we're really talking to people that are just starting out, or maybe just sell, kind of part-time. If you, when you get reviews, be very, very careful about soliciting reviews. It can also be really tricky because there's algorithms out there that kind of try to catch that stuff. So I think the long and the short is be kind and respectful to your clients and do what you say you're going to do. And most of the time, it's going to come out right for you.
I agree. Yeah, that's a good word.
All right. Well, Matt, that is all the time we have. Any last thing you'd like to leave us with? As always, we look for words of wisdom from Matt before we head out.
Words of wisdom. No, I guess I don't have any. I'm all out of wise words.
He's done. Summer has finally defeated him.
Learn how to say no sometimes. That's my words of wisdom.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Matt. We'll be back with a new show next week. Everybody have a great week.
Take care.